Hey everyone, today I'm going to be introducing you to the newest member of the family here, and that is this Century Arms built FAL clone, or FAL clone. This is the Century Arms R1A1 Sporter. I've always been a big fan of FALs, and I've always wanted to own one, and while I know there are going to be some people in the comments who say that this is not a real FAL, that's fine. It's going to serve my needs hopefully just fine. Although the reason we're making this video today is because there are a couple things that I already know that need to be done in order to get this in the form of functioning that I'm going to expect from a rifle like this one. Now, I am not any stranger to the Cold War era builds by Century Arms. You guys will hopefully recognize my C308. This is their take on the Set Me C, or I guess more loosely, the G3. I've obviously done a lot to this one, including most recently getting a paddle mag release installed by my gunsmith. He did a fantastic job, and I'm very excited to finally have a more correct mag release on this thing. I will have his website down below in case you guys are interested in hitting him up to find out about getting this done. But a very, very helpful modification to this. But I had a really good experience after seeing a lot of horror stories with C308s. I had a really good experience with mine, hence why I've invested so much into it to get it into a condition that I prefer. So I decided I would kind of do a similar thing so I can do a face-off between the FAL and the G3. But among other things, you'll notice we have an empty mag in here. I guess I should probably demonstrate that before showing this, but I have an empty mag in here, and it does not lock open. The bolt does not lock open on this thing. That is because there is a piece missing internally, and that's the main thing we're going to be fixing today. And then the other thing that I've noticed, because I did have a chance to shoot this before buying it, is that the gas regulator is a little bit loose, so it has a tendency to adjust itself while you're shooting, which obviously is not conducive to reliability. So we're going to try to address both of those things here today, because other than that, when the gas setting did stay the same, this thing was working just fine. For what it's worth, this is an inch pattern FAL. This is an inch pattern magazine that is inside here currently, and that's probably the main thing I'm going to be using with this thing. Doesn't seem to like metric mag so far from what I've tried. But anyway, let's go ahead and dig into the first fix, which is going to be fixing the last shot hold open. So let's go ahead, take the two upper and lower apart so that we can start fixing this. Actually, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to kind of explain how the last shot hold open works here. So I've pulled the dust cover and bolt carrier group out of the rifle just so we can get a better look in there. And I'm going to cut in a close-up photo so you guys can better see what I'm talking about here. But where the bolt catch is, there is a hole, which you'll be seeing up close here in a second, that is supposed to have some sort of pin in there to engage on the last shot hold open tab on the magazine itself. And so that's the piece that we're going to be installing in a very cheap manner, but should hopefully work just fine. So I'm going to again show you that image of where the piece is going to go, kind of from a bird's eye perspective, to actually get this thing to engage properly. So now that we have the upper off of the lower, we can go ahead and remove this pin here. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the magazine release on this rifle is the oversized kind of inch pattern one. So we do have to be a little bit careful when we remove this pin, because this is also holding in our magazine catch. So I'm going to go ahead and start by unthreading this screw here. So I'm going to go ahead and fully remove this here, just kind of holding everything else in place as best I can, just so things don't come flying after it comes out. There is going to be a little bit of spring tension on the bolt catch and on the magazine release, but in my experience when I've taken this thing apart just to game plan this, nothing came flying out before, and thankfully that happened again. So your bolt catch should just fall straight out of the receiver. And when we look at the bolt catch here, you can see that there is a hole that goes all the way through. One side is going to be larger than the other side, and there is a step down from the large end going towards the short end. And basically we are going to be driving a roll pin into that hole to start to work as our bolt catch. Now, just to help keep things oriented here, the tab here for your bolt catch to release it and manually lock it open is going to be on the left-hand side of the firearm. And at least in this case, I haven't obviously checked a whole lot of FALs on this, but the oversized end of the hole is on the forward side of this bolt catch. So while laying this piece flat down like this, I'm going to try to drive in that pin from the front here. Now, it's worth mentioning at this point that the blog post I'm following for this fix is authored by a guy named Shooter back in 2002, so almost 20 years ago now. And he recommended using a 5/16 roll pin, which, if my math serves me correctly, should be just over 0.3 inches. This one, you can probably see, is a little bit longer than that. I figured I'd rather go oversized and file down than start too short and have to go bigger. Started. Now, the way I'm going to try to install this roll pin here into my bolt catch is using this Wheeler Delta Series. It's actually designed to install the roll pin for your trigger guard. I figured this way it's going to be the most efficient way to hold everything steady, especially since I only have two hands, and hopefully start driving this pin into our bolt catch here. So it took a little bit of finagling to get it started here, but we are now able to start threading this screw down to get that roll pin installed. It's definitely going to be a tight fit, which I think is going to be a good thing to help ensure that this thing doesn't come out on its own under the recoil of a battle rifle like the FAL. And there you have it. So that didn't take a whole lot of effort. Let's go ahead and see how much this thing is protruding to see if we're going to have to shorten things back up. Looks like it's sticking out about 0.25 of an inch, so right around a 1/4 inch. We'll see how this looks inside the gun, see if we need to trim it down, see if we need to go a little bit longer, or just see if this even works to begin with. So fingers crossed. So with our bolt catch reinserted, I'm going to have to try to get this retaining pin back in, which can be a little tricky. You have to find that sweet spot of where it can actually go through that pin. There we go. And then also make sure our mag catch is properly aligned. All right, so now that screw is reinstalled, I'm going to go ahead, throw an empty magazine in and see what it looks like. All right, so if you can see in there now, you can see that pin that's poking through the front piece there. That is the pin that we just installed. Now, if I throw in my magazine here, let's see if it raises that bolt catch up, and sure enough, it does. And if you can see in there, there's still a good deal of standoff between that pin and the back of the follower, so this should not be impeding the feeding of any rounds, but time on the range is going to be the only way to discern that. If anything, I might need to take a little bit off, but everything seems to be working. Again, hopefully you can see that as I pull the mag out, bolt catch drops down. As I insert the magazine in and that follower or the last shot hold open tab pushes it up, it is now protruding from the top and under spring tension, which you're not going to be able to see too clearly that way. So let's go ahead and reassemble it and see if the bolt actually locks open. Okay, so far the function testing looked good. So we got our same magazine in there now, and if I pull back on the charging handle, we can see that it locks open. Let me go ahead and pull the magazine out and make sure that it still works if I push down to lock it closed, and it does. So far so good. Again, the true test will be to take this thing out to the range, make sure that that bolt catch doesn't incidentally catch on the rounds in the magazine. If that is the case, again, we'll trim it back a little bit, and time will tell if that is a good long-term fix. Keep an eye, if this does change, I will pin a comment on the top of the comment section to show whether or not this fix is continuing to work. This thing is still very early in its time with me, so we're going to be doing a lot of rounds with this guy, and we'll definitely be putting that roll pin to the test in this thing. I can't imagine that piece itself would be under too much stress, so hopefully we should be good. But with that piece out of the way, let's go ahead and see if we can't make this gas regulator a little bit tighter. All right, so now we have our upper here without the handguard installed, and we can see how the gas regulator is in there. So we have this spring that runs underneath on both sides that has a little bit of a cradle kind of bent into it, and that is what puts tension on the gas regulator and keeps it from spinning on its own in theory. Again, we are having issues with this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the spring, put a little bit more of a bend in it past this little shoulder here that it's kind of leveraging off of to hopefully put an increased amount of tension on this gas regulator and keep it from moving on its own. So I'm going to go ahead, use my little SOG power lock here to pull this end out, pull the other end out here, and then that should let us pull this thing off without too much difficulty here. There's probably a better way to do that, but that method worked well enough. So just to show you what I'm doing here, I'm basically taking one set of pliers and supporting a long edge to keep that part straight, more or less, and then using another set of pliers here to kind of get a bend into it. I'm not going to try to go too ham here, just I want to create a more noticeable bend in it than was there before to, again, hopefully just increase tension on our regulator. One of the reasons I'm willing to go ahead and give this a shot is I've looked these springs up. They're about $4 or $5 to replace should I have done this wrong or accidentally snapped it, which is unlikely for spring steel. And so I am willing to pay the consequences if I were to get this piece wrong. All right, so as you can tell on both sides, that spring is back in and locked in against the little gas block here. And I can tell you, obviously you're not going to be able to tell because you're not handling this, but there is a lot more tension on this gas regulator. So I am much more optimistic that this will move freely, or excuse me, that this will not move freely. If anything, I'd rather it be too tight than too loose, because odds are once I find the gas setting this needs to be on, I'm going to keep it there. So I'd much rather do that than to move more freely and have the potential of coming loose. I can return it to the position where it seemed to work most effectively before, and hopefully it'll stay there again under fire. Again, the real test for both of these fixes is going to be actually getting out there and shooting it and making sure this is all good to go. So it is worth noting, if you are planning on trusting your life to the FAL for whatever reason, make sure you can function test this before you put it back next to your bedside table. All right, and there we have it with just a few minutes of work here and about 15 cents worth of parts in that roll pin. This thing is now back into the style of and function that I would hope for in a FAL clone. This thing should definitely be a lot of fun. I am very much looking forward to taking this thing out on the range and getting a lot more rounds through it. Tricky part has been finding mags. If you know a good source for inch pattern FAL mags, definitely let me know. Seems like a lot of them that are available currently are metric pattern. If you have experience with the R1A ones, definitely let me know. I'm sure there's going to be lots of fun comments down below. One thing I want to mention real quick is I didn't show the disassembly of the FAL. There's a lot of good videos on how to take all the different components out. I didn't want to spend too much of this video going over that, as I know my videos tend to go long anyway. Also, it's worth mentioning, if you don't feel comfortable taking apart the FAL, then maybe these two fixes are not for you. Definitely get it in the hands of a qualified gunsmith, and both of those tasks should be very easy for them. Again, I am kind of doing this for more entertainment purposes, as I don't know whether these fixes will work yet or not. Again, take a look in the pinned comment in the comment section to see if I have redacted any of these statements, or I might just pull the video down altogether. We'll see how things go, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Hopefully next weekend we'll be able to get this thing out, put some rounds through it, and see how things run. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, definitely throw those in the comment section down below. If you have experience or recommendations with these R1A1s or FALs in general, definitely let me know. The overwhelming urge to spray paint this thing baby diarrhea green and brown is just eating away at me, but hopefully I will be able to resist at least for a while. But anyway, as always, I hope you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you watching.